In the military, you're very used to someone telling you, here's where you're going to live. This is what your job's going to be entitled. Here's your roles and responsibilities. And this is what you're getting paid. That's not the case when you transition. No one's telling you you have to live here. You can live wherever you want.
Welcome to Veteran CEO Magazine, where veterans lead the way. I'm Jay Hernandez, and today my guest is Darrell Doremus. Darrell is a 26-year active duty Army Blackhawk pilot, and over his military career, he commanded 2 battalions and a brigade while in combat, and culminated his career as the Director of Strategy and Policy and Requirements for all of Army Aviation. Currently, Darrell is the Director of Global Strategy and Analytics at Johnson & Johnson. Darrell, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jay. Thanks for having me.
So you've had a fantastic military career, and you've made that transition successfully to civilian life. In 6 words or fewer, how would you describe that transition?
Yeah, it's a great question, and probably one that's very hard to answer for a lot of us. But if I was going to narrow it down to 6 words, those words would probably be daunting, nervous, excited, exhausting, lonely, and rewarding.
So daunting, nervous, excited, exhausting, lonely, and rewarding. That's quite a journey, just going through those words. So let's start at the very beginning. When you talk about that transition being daunting, I'm sure a lot of our service members and veterans listening to this have probably felt a similar way. So let's start with daunting and dive into that a little bit. How was your transition daunting?
Yeah, I think a lot of us as veterans, we think as we get into our military careers, we're never thinking of the end state of the career itself. We may be always thinking about the mission and our day-to-day, life, but we're not thinking about the transition itself. And it sneaks up on us, whether you like it or not. And as someone used to tell me, there will be a list where you're at some point in your career, which your name is not on. So you have to think of your future. And as you look at that, when I did this, I came right out of Afghanistan. I came back to my last position. I had about 6 to 8 months to transition. And it seems like a lot of time, but it's really not when you start thinking about having to move, out process, getting through medical and VA records, coming up with a solid resume, networking, talking about life insurance, where schools and your family for your kids, not only if they're college age or younger. You got to do all that, let alone now you've got to figure out your next career field. What do you want to do? And a lot of people will talk about, I call it the 3 shuns: compensation, vocation, or location. They say if you can get one of them, absolutely, you're doing well. 2, phenomenal. You'll probably never get 3 because that's the dream job that none of us will ever have, right? Having the most amount of money you can have at the right location, doing exactly what you want. So you really got to think about those, because a lot of people will say you got to find your purpose, and that will drive kind of those 3 shuns. But each of us have different motivators in life, and we're at different phases of our careers. We have kids or no kids, and that drives all 3 of those on location. Hey, do I want to be in a populated school district, a non-populated school district? Will I have to commute 45 minutes going in or not? So there's a lot to do in a 6 to 8 month period. So first of all, it was absolutely daunting when you look at it as a whole. But like anything, you got to take a bite of the elephant, just one bite at a time. And you just really have to concentrate on the specific things and phase that. Hey, I've got to get my medical stuff done immediately because that takes 6 to 8 months to do. Next thing I got to do is start on my resume. Then I've got to start the networking. You just have to break it down, but absolutely daunting at first.
As you talk about the daunting, just your list of everything, when you list out all the things for it, it's obvious just how daunting it can become. And each one of those has their own time period to it. And you kind of hit on that. And that's one of those things that makes it so difficult. If you've only got a set amount of time, let's say in between duty stations or deployments, it makes it so difficult to do that. So that emphasizes that point on trying to have an idea for what all of those are, and being able to take the small steps of them at a time.
Yes, no, I mean, you're absolutely correct. And having that plan, I think, is absolutely imperative. And thank God there's plenty of resources out there, but you've got to start looking for them, asking other veterans about them, because everybody's willing to share, But a lot of times, unless you can find the right person with the same or certain set of circumstances that you have, it's very different experiences. So you're absolutely right on that.
So your next word that we talked about was nervous. So I can understand why it was such a daunting thing would make you nervous, but specifically for your transition, was there one thing that made you more nervous than other things? Was it just the overall part, or what period that would you say was specifically why you chose that word?
I think it's a lot of things. I think, first of all, after being in the military for 26 years, I think a lot of us are very type A type people. At least I am. I spent 16 and a half years in the special ops community, as you well know, in the 160th. And you always wanted to be a capability, not a liability. So you were always trying to improve. You knew your skill set. You wanted to be a subject matter expert. Now you're moving into an area, number one, from a professional standpoint, where you may not have that expertise. There may be I'm a 50-year-old man. There could be a 24-year-old young woman that is now the subject matter expert, and I could be working for. And that's not a bad thing. It's just a different thing, and you never want to disappoint the person you're working for, even that 24-year-old. So you're always wanting to be a capability, and so I was very nervous. Could I actually find something in a career field and be a capability? I had done something very niche in the Army for so long, and now I was expanding my horizons, and I kind of had, I looked nervous in a professional and personal way. On the professional side, it's just like I'm talking about. And there was three really career fields I was kind of looking at. Do I, one, go out and become like a GS civilian? Hey, I've been a colonel. I could walk in and maybe be a GS 13 to 15. But I really was like, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to make a clean break. Do I want to go to the defense sector and kind of use some of my expertise there? And I kind of said, no, I really want to challenge myself. And that's where veterans have to kind of look and go, or do I just take a clean break and move out into industry, whether that be, in the home building industry, that be in Amazon, that be at a pharmaceutical, wherever it may be. That was the nervousness that, you've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's exactly what it is on a professional side. Now you take the personal side. And this is kind of just like we said, you may find something you absolutely are passionate about and love, but now I have a personal side. It's not only about my livelihood, it's about a livelihood of my family. I have a wife and 4 kids. We have a certain standard of living we were accustomed to. I have to, you're trying to maintain that at least standard of living, if not more. So there are sacrifices that have to be made because just like we've talked about on the shuns, you may find the absolute great location, but the compensation may not be there to maintain your standard of living. So those are the pros and cons. And I was absolutely nervous, both on a professional and a personal side. Could I not disappoint the people I was working for? And more importantly, could I not disappoint my family?
Your topic on being able to have all those different areas. We've talked with people here, some interesting stories where we've had some people who deliberately set themselves up at the end of their career where they wanted to live afterwards. We've also talked with people who moved across the country, clear to the other side with no network whatsoever. And both of those tie perfectly into what you're saying is sometimes you can have that location, but there's going to be some differences on there. And so really understanding the full part of that. So, and then the family part, I can relate so much. And I'm so many of us listening that was at the absolute top of my mind when I was talking to just, my mentors in the military about what I was going to do next. Yes. Family was, for me, always at the very top. That more than anything else, for me at least, that's where I was thinking what would be best for my family. And I think that's what made me the most nervous on getting out, was being able to continue to take care. And it ended up working out great. That there were challenges, but it also for my wife, it allowed her to really get the foothold on her career, and it just took off.
And that's a great point, because a lot of our spouses out there do have careers that they may have put on the sideline. And this is another time where, hey, instead of you leading the charge, maybe they're leading the charge. So that's an absolutely, a great point of view there. That the other thing I'll say I was nervous about, I think in the military, we're very used to, when we plop down, we're surrounded by a community. It's a built-in community. It's a bolt-on. You already have friends, you have shared experiences, you have shared values, and it's there. Now you're picking up your family and you're moving to where I am. I kind of did like you, from the southeast all the way up to the northeast in New Jersey, from Alabama to New Jersey. No network, nothing. And that'll come around here in one of our other points, but it's absolutely daunting and nervous. So yes.
Let's start to transition here
Yeah.
from nervous to excited. So
Yes.
that's when stuff starts to pick up, I think that's when it gets exciting, and you can realize that maybe you don't have to be as nervous on stuff. But why did you choose excited, and where was that part as your transition?
Yeah, it kind of goes into, when I finally decided that, hey, I don't want to be a GS employee, at least not right now. I never ruled out any opportunities. I will tell people that. Always keep every door open, because you don't know what tomorrow will hold. But we had decided we wanted to make a clean break from the military, and the pharmaceutical industry and Johnson & Johnson had an incredible opportunity that was extremely humble to be picked for. I was absolutely excited about doing something new, challenging myself. Like I say, it's not that I was a subject matter expert at what I was doing, but after 26 years, you do get comfortable doing the things you've been doing. This was something now, a whole new world, a totally different landscape and environment. And there's a lot of choices out there that, in the military, you're very used to someone telling you, here's where you're going to live. This is what your job's going to be entitled. Here's your roles and responsibilities. And this is what you're getting paid. That's not the case when you transition. No one's telling you have to live here. You can live wherever you want, as long as you show up at this time. And some jobs now, you don't even have to. It's virtual. So, absolutely excited about having choices that you never, ever had before. Now you start to get offers that come in, and there are things that you never thought about. And you've got to start talking to mentors, friends, and others about it. When I talk about compensation, it's not just monetary. Some of it now is stock options, bonuses, personal time off, vacation, besides numerous other benefits that companies offer. So that's an exciting world that none of us, at least me, had ever experienced. But it's also something that's new. So you definitely have to be studied and learn and talk to others, because I will tell you, it's also one of those areas in the corporate world no one talks about internally. We're very open in the military, because I can go in the Army, Navy times and know exactly your rank. I can go, this is what you get paid. Your compensation's there. That is not the case in the corporate world. So understanding the environment and landscape you're in, and the people that are in that career field to help you navigate that is absolutely, it's fun. It's exciting. It's something I've never experienced before. So it opened up a whole new world. Plus the job field. I had never been exposed to this. It was absolutely challenging, and it still is each and every day. But there are incredible people that help you along that journey. So extremely excited in that endeavor.
I do want to jump into just how exciting it is, like when you do make that transition successfully. One area that you had talked about when you did transition, you're currently at Johnson & Johnson. So my first question is, was that your first choice?
It was. And I say, well, let me step back. It probably was not, because I'll tell you, when I got out of the military, I was not as prepared as I thought. And I threw a wide net. And I'll tell you, as I started to understand the corporate world and the transition process a little bit better, I realized, hey, like anything in the military, you should be targeted, it should be specified, and you should know what you're going after. At the very beginning, I didn't. I was throwing resumes everywhere. And some were landing, some were not. For, like they tell you, for every probably 100 you put out, you may get 10 callbacks, and you may, out of those, only 1 to 2 actual interviews come to fruition. So I had applied at Amazon. I had gotten picked up there. I applied at Homeside Housing. I got picked up there, but I was waiting on this one to see if I could get a call back. So originally I was throwing resumes out there. Once I started to get targeted, yes, Johnson & Johnson was absolutely where I wanted to go. But like anything, you better have a secondary, PACE plan, a primary, an alternate, a contingency, and an emergency. Because as we said, the environment changes every day. And businesses do too. I think the one thing we all learn is, I said it earlier, being comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that's not so much always like being in a job and not knowing, not being the subject matter expert. In the corporate world, unlike the military, in the military, there's a lot of stability. In the corporate world, that's not the case. You lose a defense contract, guess what? This project's going away. You lose this business deal, guess what? This section is erased tomorrow. And they're not always getting slid back into the company. So that's part of the being comfortable with the, with the uncomfortableness that's out there. But to answer your question, once I was targeted, yes, Johnson & Johnson was absolutely the company I wanted to go for. It had a larger purpose than myself, had an incredible military network, and a phenomenal reputation and incredible culture.
So whenever you were talking about how you cast a wide net and then it got more focused, very similar to something that I had for my transition after I had made my big move and was transitioning to the industry side of it. Within my first, what I would say that was like my big true transition. I had done some military to contract work immediately, and that was the easiest transition ever. But then my second transition, that was much more difficult. Over 200 resumes is what I wrote and applied for it. Just trying as fast as I could to get my name out there as quickly as possible, because I didn't know what exactly I was looking for. But through each one of those, I started to learn the different jobs and industries that related to my skill set, where I was living. And I was then able to start to get an idea, okay, here are the different companies that do what I'm looking to do. And I was able to kind of get pools from there. And then I was able to really fine tune what you were saying on there. I'm not saying everybody has to go out and write 200 resumes right away. That just happened to be, I brute forced my way through that one.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, doing it wasn't like a copy and paste resume experience either. It was I'm trying to customize it and personalize it for each and every one. That's the only way that ended up being beneficial for me. If I copied and pasted the same thing, well, yeah, that's easy. I'm not really putting much effort into figuring out what the job market looks like where I live.
Jay, that's a lot. That's pretty impressive. 200 specific and targeted tasks.
Well, I think about it sometimes. Is it impressive or is it not impressive? Because that's also a whole lot of rejections, and being comfortable with rejection. That's just part of it. Honestly, it
absolutely. That is absolutely 100%. And I think we learn so much from failure. Like they say, great units study failure, good units study success. And that's right. You've got to. And the other thing on that, how many times were you ghosted, where people you wouldn't even know? They wouldn't pick up a phone. They wouldn't pick up an email. You send a resume and that's it. Done. So you're exactly right. Those are some of the, I would say, trials and tribulations that we all go through. And you got to be, the expectation management. It will happen.
At this point, I do want to talk a little bit about a program that you use at Johnson & Johnson, the Experienced Military Veteran Development Program. Tell me a little bit about what this program was like and how you got into it.
Yeah, so once a year, Johnson & Johnson has a program, which you mentioned, the Experienced Military Veterans Leadership Development Program. And they also have a subset of the Military Veterans Leadership Development Program. So I'll acronym it, EMVLDP is the one that I applied for. And what it is it's once a year, they will hire approximately 4 veterans with 20 plus years of experience, CW4 and above, E7 and above, and also, E8 and above, and O5 and above. And what they will do is they will provide you 2 9-month rotations within Johnson & Johnson, and then you can compete for a position within the company. My first rotation was in their supply chain and their strategy department, just to understand, a little bit of business culture, the stakeholders involved in the industry, as well as get a little bit familiar with the business acumen coming right from the military. And then my second rotation was in their portfolio innovation and commercial strategy department, where we looked at early development of our molecules, and we tried to accelerate, maximize the value of them. But bottom line is, it's 2 9-month rotations where They allow you to learn the business, the culture, and make sure this is where you want to be. Um, while you're doing this, you're also part of a cohort. So not only are you going on this journey, it's not by yourself. There's three others in your cohort with you, and you meet on a weekly, if not monthly basis, in person and online, to discuss your trials, tribulations, and experiences. And then the experience portion has been going on for 2 years. So there's also two other cohorts that you connect with. So it's an absolutely incredible organization. And if you don't know anything about Johnson & Johnson, they're one of the few organizations that I know of that has a credo, is what you would call it. And it's kind of just like, our oath of office. It talks about, hey, a responsibility to the patients, to the doctors, the nurses, number one. Then it talks about a responsibility to the employees. Then it talks about a responsibility to the community. And finally, to the stakeholders or shareholders. So, that really resonates, I think, with anybody in the military. Hey, we have a responsibility to our soldiers. We have a responsibility to their families. We have a responsibility to the community. And then we have a responsibility to taxpayers. So it is a very values-based company. And that really attracted me to the organization in itself. So huge proponent, and love to get it out there. It's becoming an absolutely incredible group of people, and you can just see the cohort behind us even better. Just like anything, you're wanting to get better each and every year, and I can definitely see it has.
I've heard of these leadership development programs with different companies, and this one being so specific to veterans with so much experience. But I do think that's an area to kind of point out on this call is many companies do have these development programs.
They do.
And at various levels as well.
And Jay, you're exactly right. So I talked about the experience. Johnson & Johnson also has one, which is called the MVLEP. And they do the same thing with that cohort. They just don't have the 20 years. So absolutely right. And they're probably, one of the better things, because like we talked about, it is a daunting process. Even getting on board, understanding the environment, the acronyms that come up every day, just being able to bounce those things up, especially when you're in some of these Zoom environments where you don't get to have a one-on-one afterwards and ask the boss, hey, what does that mean, or appear? You're in a Zoom and then you're done. So you don't even know, you don't have time to ask the acronym, the proper question. So these cohorts that these companies do, absolutely incredible, and thank them for supporting the veterans and what they're doing.
That probably will help us lead into some of the things that are exhausting. But I believe that when you chose this word, we're talking about the full transition on how exhausting that can be. So tell me about your experience and what was the most exhausting part of it.
Once again, moving with a family. So I will tell you, everybody thinks, physical, we've been in the military, so we've all been physically pushed, and that's exhausting. But I'll tell you what's more exhausting is the mental strain that you have to put on. Because like we talked about, you're nervous about providing a livelihood for your family. You're moving. So you've got all these stresses and pressures upon you. But I will tell you some of the other things that you don't even think of that are so exhausting are creating and maintaining the networks. Just like you said, sending out 200 resumes. Oh, that seems like, I'll make a baseline resume and then just send it out. That's not it. You have to be specified. You have to be targeted. You have to have the keywords that are in the word search, for the job description, for them to even pull your resume up. Those things are absolutely exhausting. And then once you do find something you like, creating that spider web of networks, meeting with people for 30, getting 15 to 30 minutes of time for cups of coffee, a Zoom meeting, just to understand the business, as well as, hey, maybe allowing them to help you move that resume along. I will tell you, in the military, we have thousands of relationships. As a brigade commander, thousands of people. But I will tell you, as I started to get out of the military, I realized some, if not a lot, of those relationships were transactional. Whether, as much as we like to say, hey, these are the people that that are going to be my best friends for life, time and life gets in front of all of us. And some of those relationships you thought would have meaning and fruitful endeavors don't come to fruition. So you've got to continue to cultivate and nurture those relationships. You can't let them die on the vine. And that's exhausting. It really is, doing that each and every day, putting on the game face, going out there, and like you say, being rejected, picking yourself back up and going at it, again. And you're doing all of this, like I say, while we're moving our family. And I lived in a friend's basement, all 6 of us, for about 4 months while we were waiting on, because the housing market 2 years ago was absolutely ridiculous, especially in the Northeast. So absolutely exhausted. But the key to me, at least, was the family, the habits we learned in the military as far as maintaining a physical fitness, meditating, as well as being open and honest with my spouse. So I will tell you, I've done a lot of things, like say 26 years, 13 deployments to Iraq, 13 to Afghanistan. This was probably one of the most exhausting experiences I've had in my life, from a mental perspective.
And that's such a key area I want to hone in on, it is because several folks who have deployed know what that exhaustion is. When you are physically and mentally just pushed to the limit throughout a deployment, and we think about all of the prep work that we do before a deployment just to prepare ourselves for that. That's the same level of preparation you have to take for your transition.
You're absolutely 100%, and probably more. And at least I would say, even in combat already, I usually know a little bit about the enemy. I know about the landscape. I know about the tactics they're using. Some of that, you're going into areas you have none of that. So now you're trying to, like you say, come up with contingency plans, primary base plans on something. So that is mentally exhausting. You're absolutely correct.
That can tie to something I believe a lot of us feel when we do this transition is you pick the word lonely for your 5th word.
Yes.
I will tell you, you are not the first person to tell me their transition was lonely. So I think a lot of us feel this way, but tell me about your experience with it.
Yeah. I think we've all been part of teams. I mean, that's what I think really attracts us to the military, serving a purpose larger than ourselves, shared values, having camaraderie, and men and women around you that, you would lay down your life for, essentially. When you get out of the military, I mean, it seems it's almost like that. That tie is almost broken. We all know it, even in the military. As soon as you say you're retired, you can kind of feel people like, backing away from you. Hey, he's not going to get promoted anymore. She's not going to move it, whatever it may be. But I will tell you, once you're out, you pack your stuff, you move away from the base, the gate closes. You're a team of one. That one is your family. I'm not saying there's not people out there to support you. That's not what I'm saying. And there are plenty of veteran networks. There are plenty of friends that, I could hop on a call with. I'm just saying, in this endeavor, you're the one who's going to either make or break it. No one else is going to get that job for you. They may get you to the Super Bowl, but you got to play. So that's why I say it's a lonely road. And we talked about it earlier. It's not only lonely for you. You kind of have to, if you have a family, you also have to go. I had a spouse that, like I said, she gave up her career for 20 years ago to follow me and raise a family. And she had been plopped in different places, but like you say, they were bolt-on places. Now she had a friend network, a family readiness support group. Our kids, went to schools with other military. That's not the case now. You're in a community now where people have lived here for 2 to 3 generations. Everybody knows everybody except for you. Your kids are good. No, these kids have grown up and gone from schools, from kindergarten through 8th grade together. So not only are you lonely, your kids and your family. So you really have to watch out for one another in this. And we all know it. We say it a lot, but hey, if you are feeling that way, reach out. There are people that, just like you said, I'm not the first one to say this. And there are days that I still feel lonely. All of us, I think, go to work. We have a purpose, don't get us wrong. And that purpose now may be our family. It may not be the organization we're in. Our purpose may be, on some community events. I'm a volunteer firefighter. I found a larger purpose in some of that as well. So I think we all experience it, but knowing about it and people talking about it brings it to the forefront and allows others, like you say, that expectation management. This will happen. It's just when it's going to happen. And are you prepared? And do you have the right coping resources?
So volunteering is an area that I've also heard other people talk about, and just how important that can be to the transition. So why for your experience and decision to volunteering? So for firefighting, did you have an experience before that, or how did you come to be a volunteer firefighter?
Yeah, no, Jay, it's a great question. And I think a lot of us veterans do find that, hey, volunteering gives us a larger purpose than ourselves. You know, not that businesses don't, but volunteering actually does. You know, the value you're getting is you're providing your time to benefit the others, and that's usually the community. So I volunteer with the Travis Manion Foundation here. I do their 9/11 runs as far as organizing those, and I also, volunteer in giving character matters speeches at different schools. But while I was doing this, I also, I think all of us in the military, I wanted to get my hands dirty again, and firefighting, police officers, they kind of, to me, stick their lives out there for the larger purpose of others. And I just said, hey, the age of 51, let me also try and see if I can keep up with these 18 to 21-year-old kids at firefighter school. So it was a very humbling experience for me, but it also allows me to give back. So I do think it fills a portion of my heart or soul that that the Army once did, that maybe business doesn't. And it does allow me to also be around like-minded people that are serving something larger than themselves.
So I got two questions here. And the first one, please don't hate me for asking, but how did you
No.
do keeping up with the 18 to 20-year-olds after you got out?
Perception is in the eye of the beholder. I say I did great. Well, I bet you the instructors there, well, they probably have a different story. But yeah, I think I did. I held my own for the community. So
That's fantastic. So my other part that I wanted to get to on the volunteering part, in the military, there's also this term called voluntold to do stuff, and we have to do it. And what I didn't appreciate as much when I was in is, like, yeah, I was voluntold to do all sorts of things, but through that, whether or not I necessarily realized at the time, I was embracing that same event that I was doing with my peers, and we were growing closer as a result. Now,
yeah.
I don't know exactly if that's always the case. I don't think it is always the case, but what I did find after I had started into my civilian career and I got proficient with my job and I knew what I was doing and I was looking for that next thing to do. Once I started volunteering more within my company, and then just in general, two things happened for me. Volunteering within the company, I just started to get to meet people who I would have gotten along with way longer and would have helped with part of that lonely experience, because I'm not necessarily doing just my job tasks at that point. I'm now volunteering to do something else, and I'm getting to bond with that person over something that's not tied specifically to my day-to-day tasks. And I get to enjoy that area more. And then just when I'm walking around the office, I see that person and we can connect on that more. I can't tell you how many people I've discovered, like, the same sports that I do. Not because I was working on a work project with them, but because we volunteered together, or just whatever the hobby is. And then through that, it kind of goes into that network building, which can be exhausting, but it's in areas that weren't necessarily where I expected it to be. But then I understand the full business case a little bit more. I understand my community a little bit more, and I'm able to get more embedded.
I think you're spot on with those observations, because I do think, like you say, a lot of us, when we first get someplace, we kind of want to shelter ourselves in and hunker down. But by exposing yourself, putting yourself out there, you realize there are a lot of people that you may not have ever met that have the same likes, dislikes, that you have. And there are a lot of people out there that will help one another. They really will, whether it be finding a job, finding a house, helping with yard, whatever it may be. But by getting yourself and exposing yourself to others, you find those connections that you would. So, but that's one of the hard things, like we say, to do, especially being the new person in town or on the job. But absolutely one of the most, like, it probably leads to that last word you're going to talk. rewarding things.
That's entirely what I was leaning into. What
Yeah.
was how that can be rewarding, as one part. But you chose rewarding as your last word, and I believe you placed it here strategically. So from lonely to rewarding, how did you get to that point?
Yeah, I think as we talk today, it almost comes full circle. A lot of it does seem, if someone was listening to this and just, hey, daunting, nervous, excited, exhausting, lonely, it's almost like, oh my gosh. But at the end of the day, all of it is for the end state, and it's rewarding. And to me, I found an incredible company. I found that has a larger purpose than just themselves. I have a great work-life family balance. I'm getting to reconnect with my kids, which I never, ever was able to do, to have that in the military. I know we talk about balance. I don't believe really in balance. I believe in, priorities. If your family's a priority, then your work's going to suffer. If your work's a priority, your family's going to suffer. But I now have a work-life balance, which is absolutely rewarding to me. And then, like you say, I am able to do things I was never able to do in the military. Volunteering for organizations that, hey, if you get a call at 2 a.m., I can go do it and not have to worry about getting up at 4:30 for PT. So it is absolutely rewarding. The people you meet, the new experiences in life, and the challenges that you face. So I absolutely did choose this as my last word to talk about today, because there is a life on the other side. And all the veterans out there, they can succeed at whatever they put their minds to. And I know that may sound cliche, but it's absolutely true. The values and the skill sets that you bring to corporate America, hey, articulating, large complex problems into simple solvable solutions, teamwork, leadership, problem solving. Those are all things that our businesses need and want out there. And veterans bring that each and every day to the table. So that's why doing things like this and what you're allowing us to do, Jay, sharing our message, this is rewarding. This is giving back to others. And anything I can do to help that community, I'm 100% on board.
One of the things that came to mind as I was building VCEO is being able to share those stories to show that whole process and how it does get to rewarding, but also just on that, being able to translate what was rewarding throughout the career. And I found that so many companies, when I was talking to them, they wanted to hear, that I was competent on it. But a key point that once I learned to do this really seemed to make that difference go off in the minds of people is when I said, here's the task I had to do. Here's how I was able to handle it and what I did. But tying to what was the rewarding part for it, when you show that reward, people want part of that experience too. So really making sure to emphasize on that. And then it just ties back into, as you kind of build towards those rewarding experiences, they'll manifest over time.
Yeah. And like you say, I think rewarding, I think when we're in the military, sometimes we think of rewarding as, hey, awards and acumen, and you get out and you go, I don't even remember what my retirement award. You realize, hey, there are other things in life that are much more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you hit on a lot of them. The connections you have with people, the volunteer work that you can provide others, the assistance we provide one another as veterans. So yes, absolutely rewarding. And those are the things that make you smile and come to work every day.
Well, Darrell, I don't have any other questions for you today, unless there's something that I missed today that you really wanted to hit on.
No, I truly appreciate the opportunity, as well as what you're doing for other veterans out there. So thank you for your time today as well, Jay.
Absolutely. Well, Darrell, thank you again. This is Veteran CEO Magazine, where veterans lead the way.